All right, folks, we'll start in just 1 minute. Okay, folks. Well, good morning. It's Tuesday, and that means it's Coffee Chats with Economic Alliance Snohomish County. I am Gary Clark, President and CEO. As you can see, Katie has put up our new logo. So please give us your thoughts on that. So Tuesday morning, that means we have a good group of folks here, and we're just going to dive right in because it's an opportunity for some great conversation about, drum roll, rural projects. So first things first, we usually have some housekeeping items to highlight, and we want to make sure that you engage. So please join the conversation. There's great opportunity for questions of our panelists. And then remember to add your organization to your name so that we know who you are and who you're with. That's kind of our housekeeping for now. Now, it gives me great pleasure to welcome our panelists for this Coffee Chats. So we have from the city of Stanwood, Jennifer Ferguson, city administrator. We also have from Salton, Washington, Will Ivershoff. And Will, if I must add, I do have that Salton hat and I am keeping it safe. So it did not get dirty when I was doing yard work. It is an all-purpose hat. And last but not least, we have Brent Kirk, who is from the city of Granite Falls. And Brent is the city manager and public works director. So I want to thank you all for joining us today. We have a great group of Coffee Chat folks who you can see above. And what we like to do to start things off is, and we'll end it this way as well, is if you have your coffee cups, folks, hold them up in solidarity, right? Also, I'd like to say for those who are in missions overseas, we just want to hold these cups up for them and recognize what's happening over there for sure. All right. That being said, we have some good conversation to have. But before that, Jennifer, I'm going to ask you to give a brief intro of who you are, how you've operated with the city of Stanwood. Tell us a little bit about Stanwood, and then we'll go to Will, and then we'll finish up the intro with Brent. And please provide any good, juicy stuff that's happening in your community as well. So Jennifer, take it away.
All right, well, good morning, everyone. Good morning from Stanwood. I'm the city administrator. I've been with the city for about 3 years. We have a lot going on in Stanwood, so I'm happy to be here to be part of this panel today. I believe we even have a council member on, Council Member Darren Robb, as well as some Stanwood city staff to join me. We've got Sarah Cho, our economic development and marketing manager, and Sarah Robinson, our city clerk. That's all I saw. So welcome. We'll be getting into some questions, I think. We've got, like I said, good things going on in Stanwood. If you've not visited Stanwood, but you visited Camino Island, then you did visit Stanwood because you drove right through it. And we always encourage you for folks to stop. Stanwood's about 7,400 people, and we're growing. We're seeing a lot of pressure from growth and all the migration north that's happening, that other smaller rural communities are likely happening as well. So with that, I will turn it over to Will, I believe is the next one.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Will Ivershoff, city administrator for Salton. I've been here for 3 years. Prior to that, I was the mayor and administrator for Duval for 12 years. And Salton is on US 2, get about 18,000 cars driving through a day. And we're seeing a lot of growth coming through. So we're a community of, used to be 5,000, now we're up to 5,700. And we have, we will see about 300 new homes getting built in our city this year. And most of that growth is occurring in one section of town off of US 2. And so traffic is obviously a big issue for us. So we're focused on that. And then, of course, the infrastructure with the wastewater and water is always a big deal when cities grow. And so those are kind of three big projects that we're focused on for this year and next year.
Brent Kirk, city manager now in Granite Falls. I've been there about 10 years. Got hired as public works supervisor, was mowing lawns and reading water meters in 2009, and promoted to public works director in 2012. In 2014, the mayor wanted to create a city administrator position and gave me the dual role at that point in time. And then with the help of a few key community members, I think one of them's on the chat here today, Catherine Anderson, they did a really good push in the community to change the form of government to manage or council to avoid some of the pitfalls of small communities with, elected mayors that happen over and over again. And so 2016, we went to a city manager form of government. They hired me to do that position, and I've been there ever since. So a little bit about myself. Community, in 2017, we had a big wave of submissions for growth, 327 lot plat, a couple other 50 unit housing developments at least. So we've had about 40% population growth since 2017. We had about 1,300 units of housing to begin with. We're at 1,800 now. And if any of you guys know Granite Falls, it's like a donut hole in the middle of unincorporated Snohomish County. So everything around it has grown as well. And you've got, the $1 million houses on an acre and all that stuff outside of town. And so I tend to tie us into being like a bit of a regional service center for the area. That's what I tell Nate Naring and Sam Lowe all the time. Hey, give us some money from the county because we're serving your people too.
Mm-hmm. All right, folks. Well, that cues it up really well. We've got lots of projects and activity and growth happening in Stanwood. We've got 300 units of housing being developed, as Will mentioned, in Sultan. And then Brent just basically said they're building a new metropolis, basically, in Granite Falls with all of the housing taking place there. I want to just highlight and cue this next question up by saying, my first job was actually in a rural community called Newberry, Florida. It's about 3,000 people. And I was the city planner, Main Street manager there. And so over the years, I've just built a huge affinity to rural communities and the connectivity that it brings and the diversity it provides for a regional area. So quick question though, I know a few of you mentioned just some general activities that were taking place, but tell us, Jennifer, starting off, what's something that you're really excited about as far as a project that's taking place in your community? And then we'll go to Brent and then Will after that.
Well, thank you, Gary. Great question. So an exciting project in Stanwood is what we call our City Beautification Action Program. This entails the City Council established this program to spruce up Stanwood. And what is included in there is small projects that help to add in aesthetics for making Stanwood look welcoming. It's part of creating improvements for community members. But what that means is that we're going to be starting some landscaping projects at our intersections, so that when you come to Stanwood, you know that you're in Stanwood. So we're kicking off that this year, which is very exciting. It's also connected with wayfinding. So before my time, there were a number of projects and programs that had just been stalled. The city had gone through an effort to create wayfinding signage. These are the snow geese signs. If you've been to Stanwood, they're beautiful. And they help with showing people where to go, whether it's the shopping districts, whether it's the library. So it's helping to direct folks. We're working on enhancing that, adding in more signage so that when we do identify public facilities, they're identified with the same sign. We just put in and identified better our municipal parking areas, and that is all branded within our Snow Goose, our logo. One of the major projects that's included in the city beautification program is what's called our Main Street redevelopment, and that's 271st Street. It's also 270th. So Stanwood has a very long expanded downtown. There's 4 main areas, there's 4 districts. One of them includes an uptown area, but in the downtown, there's 3 areas, and we have what we call our bookend downtown, east and west. Stanwood has long been known for east and west downtowns, a little bit of the Hatfield and McCoys, fighting with getting services from the city. The city's not giving some love to this end. So what we're doing is we're looking at creating concepts, town center concepts. There's the potential for closing those roads to create a festival street. There could certainly be a one-way through those streets. So it's not been finally designed, but we're hopeful to use some of the ARPA money to expedite the design and kick off those projects sooner than we had for local economic recovery. Then, of course, that means the full Main Street redesign. So that's so important with continuing to support our ecosystem for our businesses. They're the lifeblood of the community. And so that's why that project really excites me. Another one we have is certainly we have State Route 532 goes through Stanwood. We've been working with WashDOT for about 3 years now, very intensely. And that's what's exciting, is that WashDOT has come to the table and we're working on a better corridor through Stanwood so that folks, and I mentioned that Camino Island, those folks see Stanwood as our town center. So like Brent mentioned, we provide services to folks in Island County as well as unincorporated Snohomish County. And we find that people identify with Stanwood as town. And so we provide those services, and creating that Main Street, that beautification of our downtown area is very, very important for economic vitality for the community.
Thank you, Jennifer.
My turn. All right, Gary. I'm kind of an infrastructure guy, so I think the thing I'm most excited about is a future road extension we've had planned for over 20 years now in town. It's called the Galena Street extension. If you come into town where the light is at Rite Aid and you take a right, we've acquired all the land behind those commercial properties over the past 5 to 10 years and intend to extend a second road through town. If you come in now, you'll find in the afternoons, you have a backup, 3 blocks back at the intersection of Stanley and Granite where the Spar Tree Tavern is and the Omega Pizza and all that. So that's exciting to have 2 main drags that'll go through town and hopefully divert about 50% of the traffic going south out of town through a different road, and it'll help preserve the Stanley Street as well, last a little bit longer. And I think if we get some funding for that from TIB this year, we've saved enough and got enough REIT money over the last few years with all the new housing construction to hopefully fund that project here in the next couple of years. As far as stuff we've done that we were excited about that we didn't get a chance to show off yet, we built a brand new civic center and a city hall that we finished in the fall of 2019. And then spring come around and we're going to show it off and COVID hit. So it's basically been on lockdown, which is nice because it stays clean that way. Right, you don't have the public going into it, but it's a beautiful facility and it was meant to bring the community together. We've got the city hall on one side and the civic center that'll hold about 100 people on the other side, and we use that for council chambers and multi-purpose rooms. And then we also built a new police station through the COVID crisis. The old one was in such bad shape that Snohomish County Sheriff's Office didn't want to pay rent anymore for their portion to occupy the building. So we tore it down. It was an old video parlor. And we just finished a new modular building, which saved about, I'd say, $500,000 to $700,000 from stick building the same structure. It's amazing what you can put together. In fact, the building in Howler Park there, the city of Arlington has, is a modular building as well. That's kind of where I got the idea from. And it has the same theme as the city hall, train station, level 3 security, bulletproof glass in the front, beautiful structure. And we got all the furniture either for free from some lady down Linwood on Craigslist, or we got some UW surplus. So we saved a ton of money on the furniture for the City Hall and Civic Center from an FAA building and did the same thing with the police station, which is kind of interesting. We probably $200,000 to $300,000 worth of furnishings we got for, I'd say 5 to 10 grand we spent for everything. So that was pretty neat over the last few years to just find ways to cut costs in a small community and use that money somewhere else, which is kind of the next thing is we put some money into new skate ramps are coming this fall for the skate park. And with the help of some REIT money from the county, we were able to redo our basketball court. We're just finishing that up now with new hoops, fencing. We have it fully fenced now, a new ceiling on the bottom, new paint, new stripes, the whole deal. And it's amazing how many kids are using it now. And that was kind of my goal is people have to be outdoor more often now. Let's really put some money in these outdoor parks and they're getting a ton of use. And we can see the park from City Hall. So it's neat to be able to watch the amount of people that are coming and utilizing the facilities. And then the last thing is the Boys and Girls Club for about the last 5 years. We worked together to get funding to buy an old gym in town that they use as their facility, but they bought a property next door to our house down for an actual gymnasium. And then the facility, the fitness club would be used for, most of their activities, but they wanted a gym for a basketball court. That facility, I think when they built it in Sultan was probably about $800,000 or $900,000. Over the 5-year period it took us to get money, the price went up to 1.8 million for the same facility. So that gives you an idea of what it costs to build an 8,000 square foot gym, which is basically a pole building with a wooden floor and a couple of basketball hoops. So we managed to get all the funding for that about a year ago. The first phase was up, the building is up now, and the second phase is being done the interior as we speak. And that will be used as a multi-purpose building with the Boys and Girls Club. So it'll be a DEM, like an emergency evacuation shelter if we need it for emergencies. It can be used for community events as well. And then the city's acquired quite a few properties over the last 5 years, and we have a piece right next door that we tore an old church down, and that will be a parking lot for this facility, hopefully in the future as well. So there's a lot of good things going on in town, but like the same thing Jennifer and Will are going through. There's just a ton of people moving here. And I found that their expectation of a level of service is a little bit higher than what we're used to in little town of Granite Falls.
Welcome to best practices, folks, from Granite Falls. That was great. I really love the way that you mentioned describing how you cut costs as well. I'm sure everyone's paying attention to that example. All right, Will, give us a little insight on what you're excited about.
Okay, there's a couple projects we're really excited about. The first is our downtown Main Street revitalization, similar to Jennifer, the really desire of trying to create a space for people to be able to come and feel safe. And so we hired 3 interns from the University of Washington, go Huskies, and they have worked with our community development staff. They did focus groups, some outreach. They actually called around to 6 different cities to see what they were doing. And then, of course, did a community survey we had over 500 responses for. And as part of that, what they really focused in on, what would make our downtown inviting to both businesses and to entities, because it's basically one block parallels US 2 and everybody avoids it. And so our goal is to try to make it a really inviting place. And to help that, we use some of our ARPA money and granted the Chamber of Commerce funds so they could hire a business development manager and tourism manager over the next 30 months, basically to the end of when the money has to be spent or invested. And that will really drive an individual who can really go door to door, sit down over a cup of coffee, et cetera, with the different business owners and help them really strive and thrive in this community that we're in right now. Because we are, like Brent talked about, we're an island out here. I mean, you got to go 6 miles west to hit Monroe and then a few miles east to hit the other cities. And we're the biggest one in the Sky Valley. And so it's really interesting having to rely upon what's going on for ourselves. And that varies from the challenges in law enforcement, which is interesting because there's an officer who's been with the county for over 20 years. He has decided he wants to leave law enforcement and he's now going to be our new planner. And so he really loves the community and what's going on with it. So it's really exciting to see that people are vested in our community and what they want to do. The second project, which is a smaller project, is Tesla reached out to me and is going to put in 8 fast charging stations right on US 2 at one of our parks. The only caveat for that was we just had to pave the parking lot, and that's easy to do. So we're looking forward to that project being wrapped up. And then the third one is, I know people aren't big fans of cell towers, but the cell service out here, again, being an island, isn't phenomenal. And so we negotiated with T-Mobile and all the carriers to put a cell tower up. I was disappointed when they told me that it'd be 240 feet tall and they wouldn't let me put a tree fort in, because it would be a lot of fun to have a tree fort up there at 240 feet in the air, but you know, you get what you get. So it's really exciting to see us really start to evolve from a small town to a city. And so it's been neat to be able to see that. So thank you, Gary.
That's awesome. So I want to ask a question about small business and obviously volunteerism. As each of you have mentioned, there's a lot of growth bubbling up in your communities. So this means new people, new ideas, hopefully new business entrepreneurs. Can each of you describe, I guess, how that growth is happening on an entrepreneurship and volunteer level? And then what are some opportunities you're hoping for as far as businesses that you hope to see show up in your communities? We'll start with Brent, who's gone last a few times. We'll cycle back to Will, and then Jennifer, you'll wrap this one up.
So, you know, I think there's a lot of opportunities in a small town like this with small businesses, and we've seen that even through COVID over the last few years. There's some businesses who have thrived. A few, you know, some of the restaurants have gone to takeout. One of them was laughing. He said he didn't want to go back to opening his doors anymore because he's making more money on takeout than he was, you know, seating people with waitresses. But I see a lot. We were just talking the other day. In fact, Catherine came into City Hall, one of our council members, and said that she was looking at individual business licenses and all the new ones that had come about in the area. I think there's a lot of opportunity in these small communities for, you know, specialty businesses, things of that nature. And I see as the growth comes, one of the things that I guess it's a catch-22. I like it, but it concerns me is that you're going to have competition. Let's say you have one hardware store in town. You might have another hardware store wanting to come in because they see the growth in the area. Or we had an O'Reilly Auto Parts that came in a couple of years ago. And the Napa Auto Parts, you know, there was this loyalty that you always went to Napa, you know, and so there's interesting dynamics in small towns with things like that and the growing pains that go with it. I think there's lots of opportunities moving forward, especially with the growth outside the city, because you have these people that are buying outside the city that are pretty affluent and they've got disposable income and they want to come in and have dinner. They want to come in and spend money and shop at little, you know, knick-knack shops and things like that. So a lot of like the local coffee shop that was opened a few years ago has done really well. And, you know, a lot of that stuff is timing. You know, I saw stuff like that happen during the recession too, and they all folded, but now they're all thriving, some of the same businesses. So I think one of the things that concerns me though, with regard to, you know, I think the volunteerism and things like that, I've noticed as small cities, you know, these small businesses thrive, but on the other hand, like our Lions Club just dissolved 2 weeks ago. They completely shut down. And then I'm a Lions Club member in Lake Stevens. They used to have 80 members. They're down to 32. I see this happening in, you know, Kiwanis, some of these other, you know, all these service organizations that used to be very vibrant and thrived and people wanted to be part of them. I think there's just a new culture out there now where people don't want to get as involved in the small community stuff. They're more individualized in a sense. So that's one of the struggles I see for us moving forward is how do we bring our community together and, you know, get people involved in the chamber, get people involved in the local service organizations and volunteering in the community and doing things. Because I think, especially with COVID, it really put a damper on that, you know, so that's one of the things I'm concerned about moving forward. But as far as opportunities, I think there's plenty of them out there and these places are just thriving. And as Jennifer and Willow attest, there's just tons and tons of people moving into these areas and they want amenities.
I would agree with Brent on that. People are looking for amenities. The expectations have gone up. The challenge, of course, has been people are so used to living inside their own little shell with the pandemic. And of course, the numbers rising significantly. It's been a struggle to get people engaged. The piece of that that's really interesting for us is that we have a community alliance. It's a board sponsored by the city, and they put on a 3-on-3 basketball tournament. And the first time we've had 44 teams participate. So that was a really big deal. And then we did a national night out event, and we had the largest crowd we ever did. So people are very excited and wanting to get back out. The dilemma we're having is connecting with those new folks that have moved to town. And so one idea that the mayor is working on is putting together welcome bags with different items from the library and from the city, et cetera. We put a little booklet together that showed pictures of the city to find out what the parks are, et cetera. And those are being passed out to all the new community members that move into town. The challenge, of course, is getting those out to people, because a lot of folks just don't want to deliver them because they don't know where they're going. But we are finding out that we're trying to put as much of that online as well. And so we're working on trying to create that booklet that we created for the new neighbors, and actually create a section for our website for new community members and allow them ways to get involved. And so we're hoping really to build on the folk that there's new energy in town. And we really want to be able to grab hold of that and have these folks help define what some of the things are going on. They may come up with a new event we never thought about. And so the city is poised to help them anyway, to connect. And the second thing is to really engage. And so we're hoping that with them moving in and with some of our outreach that we're doing, like we did with our Main Street project, we'll be able to connect with folks.
All right, before we go to Jennifer, I did see a question that came in about from Sharon, welcome wagon, where are they, right? But Will, I think what I've seen is actually in some previous stops I've had, we've created a newcomer web links, and not just the simple, hey, we're new here, but almost a portal that allows you to pick what your interests are, and then it draws you to groups that you can join or you can engage. And as Brent mentioned, maybe that needs to help to sustain some of our organizational groups that have been around and maybe dwindling a little bit. So there are so many innovative best practices. So I appreciate you bringing that up. All right, Jennifer, take it away.
All right, thank you. I think similar to both Brent and Will, with regards to small businesses, boy, where do I start? And then of course, volunteerism. Stanwood really relies on our tourism activities, that outdoor activities in the area. We're connected, we're a coastal community. We put together an effort called Discover Stanwood Camano quite a number of years ago, and that was a visitor guide, and we lost that printer during COVID, so we had to shift into that e-visitor center. Fortunately, the city had already had the discoverstanwoodcamano.com website, so that's for events. Folks can connect about events in the area as well as places, and so that's a spot where businesses, they can shine, they can showcase their restaurant, their food, their events that are going on. And so the city hired Sarah Cho, our economic development manager, to help push that and take over and lead on that initiative. And so Sarah's jumped right in to work with businesses on making sure that they're listed, that their information, a business can do their Google listing from a global perspective, but their Discover Stanwood Camano is the regional place where they want to showcase what they do and what goods they provide if they're a boutique. With regards to then of course that Discover Stanwood Camano, we're working with North Country Seattle, that's Snohomish County Tourism, creating a microsite where they're going to come into the community and film and put stories out there about Stanwood. We did that. The city received a Port of Seattle grant. Well, we actually received it 2 years in a row to bring in a travel writer to bring in and create content on the website so that folks could find us. And we did an outreach out of state, and we're very successful for bringing visitors to the community. because our events are what help support the community, that sales tax dollar. We look to our nonprofits, and those are those volunteers that are getting, very few and far between. These folks, they've said to me that they're tired. They've been putting on these events, if it's the car show, if it's the nonprofit that puts on an event, the Historical Society, they're tired, and they want someone to take over that event, and they're successful events that come into the community. Snow Goose Festival, like I mentioned, the car show, other events that we really want to thrive. And so supporting folks who are going to get involved is important for Stanwood. I've talked a little bit about Discover Stanwood Camino. One of our efforts that we've been going through, COVID has delayed somewhat, is a public engagement toolkit. Putting that together for staff to use to communicate, to reach out to folks so that they're looking to reach in. And what's important is that instead of just doing the minimum with reaching out to people about what's going on and have them get involved, we need to provide that information. So we were looking to do a, Discover Stanwood Camino for locals. And that's more city-centric information mailed to folks so that they know what's going on in the community. And it's not just about events and the businesses, which are very important, but they can find out about city projects. They can find out about what's going on. So that's an initiative that, like I indicated, gets put on the back burner sometimes when you're dealing with a pandemic and emergency management issues. With regards to small business, we've got a very, thriving downtown in our downtown districts. We have very few vacant spaces. You'd find more vacant spaces in our uptown areas, but they're filling in. Typically in economic downturn times, people look to starting a business. And if they've got that entrepreneur bug, then we encourage that. And there's definitely resources out there. One of the things that I'm hopeful for is that, especially as smaller communities, we're becoming more complex. We have to understand who's moving into our community, and especially those who are interested in establishing small businesses, because typically it's going to be the folks that live in the area. They're going to want to seek out doing something different. And that's that ecosystem that the community needs to create to support small businesses. So it's about how to run a business, how to thrive, how to get through some of those first 3 years of 1,000 different things to do as a small business owner, and ensuring that they have all the resources to be successful. And so that's an initiative that I'm hopeful that we can help enhance for Stanwood businesses, because it's important, and small businesses really are going to be our main employers and are, if you look at that information. So it's not only the recruitment of manufacturing and bringing in the bigger businesses, but it's like Brent said, people want those boutiques to shop in. They want the restaurants to eat in. The Stanwood did a community survey in 2019 to hear from folks. And we have a lot of great restaurants in Stanwood. They wanted more. And that is what was interesting. And they also wanted that outdoor recreation. They wanted trails. And that is something that Stanwood has been able to provide for the community, create those assets that draw people in to shop in the businesses and eat in the restaurants. And we're seeing that that is, as those projects come to fruition, people are gravitating towards that, and also then saying, hey, what's this business? I'm going to, even though they might be closed, but they're going to come back to it. And that's important, is to create not only bringing business in, but creating a reason for folks to stay here. So that's my story.
No, that's amazing detail there. I want to shift gears a little bit here and ask you a more specific question. I'm just going to open this up so whoever feels the need to chime in with a comment, you can. But I want to ask a question about infrastructure. And from what I'm hearing from each of you, there's growth pressures in your community. So how will your community address those pressures of growth and the cost of infrastructure in your communities to sustain and maintain that growth? What are the biggest challenges? So who wants to chime in first?
So I'll start, Gary. The two biggest challenges we have is we provide our own water source to our community. So we need to build a brand new water plant. The infrastructure within it is aging. The system just needs to be completely redone. So that's a $7 million project. And then our wastewater plant, because of the amount of people moving in, creates a volume of material we need to treat. I can say that eloquently. That's a $17 million project. So those are two really big projects for us. And so those aren't ones we can just say, let's focus on, something else. We need to do those. Those aren't, and unfortunately, the community isn't going to see the value of those coming back. And so for us to go out and borrow $1 million a year for the next 25 to 30 years to pay for those is a big hit to our little city, but it's not something we can miss. And so fortunately for us, Senator Cantwell has put in some funds for us to help out with that of $2 million. And then because of all the growth we have coming in and our connection fees are help pay for the system, we have a fair amount of money there as well to be able to offset some of those costs. But that's the biggest challenge we have is justifying it to ourselves and to the community that we need to make these kinds of investments, knowing that it's not going to be a shiny new street for them to drive on. It's not going to be a brand new park for them to play in. So that's what we're working through right now.
Okay, Brent, any thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably pretty well documented at the state and all the other agencies that have heard me whine for the last 2 years that we need $20 million for a wastewater treatment plant upgrade. We've been in a sewer moratorium since 2018. So even though the city and the residents have seen all this growth over the last 2 or 3 years, what they don't realize is that was all permitted prior to 2018. Some of those plats were started in 2011 and made it through the process as the economy got better to make it, economically feasible to build out. So we're in a real pinch now where, you take 1,800 units of housing divided into $20 million. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at that kind of math and say, are you going to put it on the existing ratepayers? And I saw this happen in Lake Stevens when they built the wastewater treatment plant in 2008, right before the economy crashed. It was $126 million. And at the time I was a sewer commissioner for Lake Stevens. So I had to deal with the pressures of watching rates go up, almost double, and existing ratepayers paying for growth essentially. And so the question is, how does growth pay for growth, and how do you front load it? And right now, it would take one developer to come in and buy, 200 acres in town to work some sort of a deal where they can finance, maybe half of the cost of that plant, and probably 6 to 8 million of that is water quality treatment, because our wastewater treatment plant dumps into the Pilchuck River. So imagine, 4,000 people flushing a toilet going into a water body as small as the Pilchuck. It's got temperature issues, you got dissolved oxygen issues, you got phosphorus issues, and those all have to be addressed in the next plant upgrade. So we're in a pickle because the catch-22 of all this is that growth is what brings the financial stability into a city to continue to move forward, right? But at the same time, in a small community, existing residents are like, boy, I really like my small town feel. Why did you just allow 400 new houses to be built in town? And when I got hired in 2010, there was all this economic development push and, the town is dying, we're going bankrupt. We need this vitality. And now what I hear is, you're ruining our small town. Look at all this growth, all the traffic, all the issues that go with it. So then you have the issue of, let's say we get the money to build the plant somehow, and we get the upgrade done. Now you have that domino effect of, you got traffic congestion, and you've got Highway 92 would be more congested. It's the only way in and out of town. most of the people that live in this community don't have jobs here. You know, they commute to work. And then you have parking issues, right? You know, these developers want, 20-foot wide roads with no parking. Well, guess what? People aren't riding their bicycle to work in Granite Falls. They're driving out to Boeing. You know, we're up to Arlington for the industrial stuff. So, is how do you provide adequate parking for all the new residents? You know, and when they live out here, they got to have a pickup truck and a boat and an RV and, 3 cars for their kids, right? So that doesn't fit well in a 6,000 square foot lot. So you get a domino effect of these infrastructure challenges, and how are you going to address the future challenges that are created by fixing the existing ones? So again, that's kind of where we're at with it right now. We're working towards a solution, but what you see right now, we had a comment the other day in City Hall that we just saw our last building permit. We've issued about 500 building permits over the last 3 years, and the last house in the last new subdivision now has a foundation being poured on it. So then you get the construction sales tax revenue, right? That people are reliant on in these communities, and then it just goes away, right? Is that 30% of your revenue, 40%? So now you have that downturn economically that you have to deal with as well. And how do you work through those cycles, right? That's kind of where our challenges are.
Yeah, those are heavy challenges for sure. I think the balance in my mind is through policy, right? To create more incentives and opportunities to offset those costs. But I think, Brent, you make a valid point. I'm sure, Jennifer, you will too. When we're talking about the growth in our communities, the expansion of the tax base, so we don't burden one individual citizen or existing ratepayers. That's a goal of growth, but it also comes with a cost. And so I think those are valid points. Jennifer.
Oh, it definitely does. And Brent, he really hit the nail on the head with regards to the impact to the ratepayers. Stanwood is similar. Being a freestanding community, we provide utilities, we provide everything, and don't get resources from like other communities that maybe buy their water from City of Everett and wheel it into the community. For Stanwood, with regards to the rates, what we've done, and especially with the pressure from growth, the request for annexations, just the new development happening on larger tracts of land inside Stanwood, we've seen all of the building go on. One of the things that we've done is expedite, push forward a good year in advance, going back and looking at our general sewer master plan, water master plan. They're going to be updated, our facility plan updates, because we saw that we may not necessarily be able to handle the growth that's coming in. So what we're doing is we're going back to those master plans, we're updating so that we're getting a clearer picture of what those costs are going to be. Right now on our CIP, we've got about $14 million in sewer infrastructure improvements. The water isn't so much so we really need to get that capital investment out there in the plan for potentially long-term water source. We've got a good stable water source now, but in the future, why didn't the city plan better? That's what we're trying to stop. So that master plan updates then will finally end with a rate study, another rate study. The city did that in 2018. You would think that, that would have been sufficient for that five-year and the horizon year look, but we need to look farther and work on those longer term financial models that will help to guide how we need to establish rates, not only the rates, but also for the connection charges, so that development is paying for development as best as we can. And Brent said it well about that domino effect. We have that congestion already with the residential area that has developed in Stanwood. So we have corridors, our 80th Avenue, 68th Avenue, feeling the pressure, the city to improve those, make those safer. So certainly, having to put together projects that complement not only the developers paying for and doing the work because of the impact of their development, but there's parts of that the city has to finance and put out there. So it's a matter of that long-term financial model to, to help to guide for, making those really tough decisions about infrastructure. The other thing I touched on briefly was SR 532. That's where we hear from a lot of folks on Camino Island. There, with the growth happening on the island, those people are commuting to Boeing. They're commuting outside of town. Stanwood, it has most people working outside of town. The Arlington, Marysville, Cascade Industrial Center, with the growth that's happening there, that is where people are looking to work there, but they're possibly looking to live in Stanwood. And so, that's part of the pressure that we're seeing. So 532 is something, like I mentioned, we've been working with WashDOT about the portion that's in Stanwood, but now we've got to look larger. And what's really kind of cool is that WashDOT has now opened up the conversation about that, bringing more stakeholders in and looking at I-5 all the way through to Terry's Corner on Camino Island. And so that's kind of exciting because there's intersections that are currently outside of the city that could help relieve that residential transportation challenges with getting folks to and from work. That's exciting that we've got WashDOT now at the table, creating a scope of work for us to go and study that area, and then working with our legislators to get the funding for those improvements.
This is all rich information to be engaged on here. And I just want to highlight from EASC Economic Alliance perspective, we are moving in the direction of calling things in the realm of holistic economic development, right? The merger of all of these pieces. And so I want to shift gears here as we come to a close. One final softball question for you all. As you know, you've talked about some of the challenges, but there's so many opportunities in Snohomish County and your community specifically. What is it like for a newcomer, a new arrival in your community? How will new arrivals be welcomed in your community? And you've talked about some of the integration of new businesses and folks who arrive there, but talk a little bit about the diversity of your communities and the growth that you're seeing there, and what you're excited about in that respect. I know we talked about growth being also a challenge, but give me a little bit more about the opportunities. I'll start with Brent, Will, and then
obviously we've had, one of the neighborhoods that got built with Suncrest Farms was 327 houses. And I got involved early on in the first phase with the management company that manages the HOA. And they had their first real, it was a Zoom, but it was an HOA meeting with all 327 homeowners. They obviously weren't all there, but I took it upon myself to say, you know what, the police chief's going to be there. I'm going to have my public works supervisor there. We're going to answer questions for these people. We're going to let you know what you need a permit for, what you don't, what you can and can't do, what we're going to do and what we're not going to do for you related to, your neighbor parking in front of your house, that kind of stuff. And we had a welcome packet that we sent out with the help of Catherine Anderson, one of our residents at the time that's now on council. And then like she pointed out in the chat previously, we've got a lot of welcome packets that we're doing for people in the community to let them know what's going on. And it's still, you think about it, Granite Falls is 1.8 square miles. The old police chief used to say he could stand on the rooftop and see every one of his cop cars anywhere in town. And, so it's nice that it is such a small compact area because you get to know people in the downtown corridor. And one of the things we've done over the last 5 to 7 years strategically is we've bought properties in the downtown corridor to expand the, the public open space and the services. So between the police station and the new city hall, we've got a big open space. We've added on to areas on both sides of Cascade Avenue where one of the coffee shops is. We own the park on one side and a empty lot on the other side. So now we can block that entire road off for a farmer's market and not impact a single resident. And so we've really taken it upon ourselves. This is how we're going to bring our community together, by making, similar to what Jennifer and Will have said, trying to find that downtown corridor feel, and bringing it into a spot that you can just drive these new community members into. They get to know their neighbors, they get to know the business owners. And it's, you know, a small community, much like Will, the National Night Out was a great success for us. We put it in one of these new spots, and great turnout. Everybody was excited about it. Obviously, the COVID effect has really, really hampered what our philosophy was on how to welcome new people to the community. But, you know, I think over time, they're going to get together, and, you know, a few of them get to know us because we still do door hangers when they're late on their water bill. But for the most part, you know, I think that's kind of our strategy, is just give them the welcome packets, bring them into the downtown corridor, and get to know everybody.
Hey folks, I'm gonna shift gears here. I know that you both have great answers for this, but I feel like you may have answered in some ways earlier on this. And I think what we received in the chat is a great question to kind of close the Q&A component here. And so I want to give you enough time to engage this. Some of you call this the ARPA funds, and it's referred to as ARP here. We have a question that ties to the use of ARP funds for beautification. Will, you also mentioned using ARP funds for business development manager, or maybe you did. There was a question there. I think the specific question here that we have is wondering whether or not we could speak to the difficulty and challenges for rural areas being able to access federal funding, since grants often go to larger areas. And then I'll add a caveat to that. Is there an opportunity to collaborate on funds like ARPA as a collective group or area to support your efforts or needs? So I'll throw that out there. We'll go with Will first. We'll go to Jennifer and then Brent.
Okay, first I want to give a big shout out to the VOA, because I see a few of their members are here. They are a phenomenal partner with us regarding ARPA funds as well as the CARES Act. We've recently granted them $40,000 to help our residents out that are struggling with their utility bills, etc. But for us, we're playing a wait and see game with the ARPA. The county, Snohomish County, is getting $160 million. And we're really curious to see where they're going to invest their resources in it, because we don't want to pledge our money out for a large beautification project or something when they may provide grants for that. And to your point, Gary, it is a struggle to get on the radar of entities, the federal government in particular, where US2, and I'm sure it's true for Jennifer and Brent as well, as their major roads, they're not in the forefront of what goes on. They're not an I-5 or a 405 or an I-90. So getting the attention is a struggle. And so that's one of the things we're trying to work with. So we're hoping that through the large infrastructure package that Congress is debating, that there will be some local funds available to the, what I call the second tier roads, the US2s, the 522s, the Highway 9s, et cetera, of the world, that will allow us to be able to make those kinds of improvements to help create the flow of traffic, which will help draw people into the cities. Because right now, traffic is so bad on US2 that even if we put a bunch of money into a beautification project, we're not sure we draw people in, because they want to get to point A and point B and they don't want to sit in traffic. So getting off the road and then getting back on traffic is not something that's a big incentive for them right now. So we're hoping, trying to do a 1-2 punch. The first punch is dealing with transportation. Second is seeing where the county goes at with ARPA, and hopefully piggybacking with them so we can do something, because that's one of the things we're working hard on is our Main Street revitalization program. Is what does that look like? Well, how can we make the right investments to draw the right people into our community?
In Stanwood, the same thing as that, monitoring what the county is going to do. The city council saw the first, proposed use of the ARPA funds. And so nothing has been finalized yet. Certainly talking about, our Main Street redevelopment project, putting that money into that is very important for local economic recovery, but also ensuring that if the county is going to do, some infrastructure work that we're at the table with them, and we've been fortunate to have good relationships with the county in talking with that Nate Nearing. Councilmember Nate Nearing is very supportive of the potential for work, especially on 532, which is our state route challenge. With regards to federal funds, the city recently had been successful for some federal funds for a project called Viking Way. This was a project that helped to improve in the downtown area to get folks, local folks, as an option to stay off of 532 to get around in our heavy commercial area in our East District. And so we received federal funds for that, and we're looking at finalizing that second phase. That project had been stalled, if you will, because we had challenges with, right of way. That's always an issue with, those transportation projects. So we did receive some federal funds there. It is a lot of work to stay in connection with your legislators at all levels. And but we've been pretty fortunate in Stanwood to be allowed to do that. So Brent.
Jennifer.
VOA, great. We've been giving money to them for utility relief, just like Will. The local fire district, they want to start their own medic service. They were contracting out to Lake Stevens Fire that merged, and the cost to contract that out almost doubled in the new contract. So we've given them $160,000 towards starting up their own medic service, which will increase the response times of the medics within the city tremendously. It'll be great having local, but it's all about sewer, Gary. Nothing touches my heart like sewer. And we're gonna, if I had it my way, we'd blow every dollar on that sewer treatment plant. We got to get a design done. That's going to cost probably $1.5 million to $2 million, and it's required in our permit cycle coming up. So it's all about sewer.
Brent, I've not heard that slogan before, but man, that's amazing. It's all about sewer. So I just have one final question for each of you as we wrap up, and take maybe 20 seconds to answer each of you. We'll start with Jennifer. Tell me the most amazing thing that you love about your community. And I know this is a tough question, so I'll talk a little more to give you time, but most amazing thing. You've been working in these communities for a little while now. What's something that has just been spectacular for you? All right, Jennifer.
There's so many things that have been spectacular. I was born and raised on a farm in the Midwest, and so I love our small town, the charm, the agricultural, the farming community. We have a vibrant farmers market, but we also have those outdoor activities along the Stillaguamish River, the Skagit River, the island, the port. So you can, I like to say, if Stanwood and Camano doesn't have it, you don't need it. And I truly believe that.
Thanks, Jennifer. I appreciate that.
For me, it's the people, obviously, and how so few people in a community can have such a huge impact. That's what really amazes me in small communities. People like, Catherine Anderson, who's on here today, who's been a volunteer for numerous things over years. Fred Kruger, who runs our museum. I mean, it's amazing what these people can do in a small community. We've got one of the most incredible museums, in my opinion, and probably west of the Mississippi or in the United States. So you got to come see it. And the stuff he can do with GIS mapping and things like that. But just these community members that come together and are willing to step up. I use, my term is always the best, unpaid employees that we have.
I like it. All right, well, you get the last word. Okay, Gary, for me, it's knowing people in the community on a first name basis. I mean, to think about a community of 5,000 and you get 10% response wanting to improve its downtown, that's an engaged community. Walking downtown and seeing people and having a conversation with them and almost like your neighbors. And so I love that small town community feel of first name basis, and whether it's a business owner or a resident. Well, folks, this has been such a tremendous conversation with some great
civic municipal leaders. And we know that sometimes it can be a thankless job. So we really appreciate all the work and effort that you do. I just want to ask that everyone realize that we all have a rural connection. We all have some lineage that can take us back to these rural places that have really sustained America and obviously Washington State, and more so Snohomish County for quite some time. And so let's make sure that we are putting our eyes, ears, and support in those spaces. And I know Snohomish County is doing so, and EASC will continue to do the same. Additionally, I wanted to highlight the fact that I am actually the president of the National Rural Economic Developers Association. And what I'd like to extend to the three of you is open invitation to the annual conference that's coming in November in Louisville, Kentucky. But also I'd like to give the three of you an opportunity to have memberships there for at least 1 year that we will cover. And so that's my offer for you all being on this call and this chat. So nreda.org. So I'll make sure that I do that. And so Economic Alliance Snohomish County thanks Jennifer from Sultan, from Stanwood. I want to thank Will from Sultan, and I want to thank obviously Brent, who said the most catchphrase worthy thing we've heard today from Granite Falls. You folks have been amazing. On September 21st at 8:30 a.m., we are going to talk about untapped workforce. That's right, talent in Snohomish County. So we hope to hear from you all as you join us for Coffee Chat. Raise your cups up in solidarity, folks. It has been an amazing Coffee Chats moment, and we really appreciate Stanwood, we appreciate Sultan, and obviously we appreciate Granite Falls. Everyone take care and have a great Tuesday.